Hey, I'm Jake Haynes, co-founder of Pilot West Studios out of Nashville, Tennessee. And with me, I have a long time friend of Pilot West Studios and client, Misty with the Single Action Shooter Society CEO. So Misty, thank you for
Yes,
joining me.
of course. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to give a little bit of context for anyone who might be joining us on, what is the purpose of this podcast specifically? Um, as we talked about, I mean, Misty, you're our first client, I think, or one of the first clients that we ever had as a company when
hmm
it's just a two-man shop. So you just trusted two guys off the street essentially, but I think it's worked out well for everybody.
It
But
has. It has.
I think explicitly, I'd love to go a little bit more into your story because it's unique, but I think a lot of people can resonate with it, and then also better understanding as a CEO without coding experience, how you kind of navigated the legacy software scene because um, it's such a big trap for people to get caught into. I talked to many of them of many different sizes, whether you're a $1 million company to I've talked to $250 million CEO who they've all dealt with similar things where I have legacy tech, I don't know where to turn, I don't know who to talk to, and it's very easy to get taken advantage of. In fact, I think every one of our clients at some point has had a bad experience with a freelancer or an agency in the past. So I think there's a lot of things that you did that set the project up for success. That's actually pretty rare. And I'd love to get into that. But first, I want to hear more about you telling everyone what is SASS and how did you end up as a CEO? Because I actually haven't heard this story yet.
Okay. So SASS is the acronym for the Single Action Shooting Society. And we are a worldwide membership organization at our core. And we are the governing body for a couple of shooting sports, the sport of cowboy action shooting and wild bunch action shooting worldwide. So we promulgate the rules that ensure safety and consistency across those two disciplines worldwide. Um, the Single Action Shooting Society started in Southern California 1986. So 2026 marks 40 years that our company has been in business.
Congratulations,
I,
by the way.
yeah, that's pretty awesome. I joined the SaaS team in 2009 when their offices were then in Edgewood, New Mexico, and just immediately fell in love with the people and its mission and just what a great company it was. The founders of the sport of cowboy action shooting in SaaS were still very much involved in the day-to-day operations of the company at that time. Um, Fast forward a few years, they were aging. We lost a couple of the founders. That group was called the Wild Bunch Board of Directors, paying homage to the Sam Peckinpah, Peckinpah, it's Peckinpah, I think. Yeah.
Hmm.
Film The Wild Bunch from the 60s. So as we started to lose kind of a few members of the Wild Bunch board of directors, I believe it was 2011 that I was invited onto the board of directors. And another year after that, they made me CEO because I just kind of have an A plus personality. I kind of come in and, or type A personality, I come in and just want to make things better
Hmm.
and streamline processes. And it's just kind of who I am, whether it's cleaning out the refrigerator or
Yes.
running a company. I can always feel like I can always really strive to find a better way to
Right
do
there with you.
things, to be
Absolutely.
more streamlined and efficient. So um, that's how I became the CEO in 2020. My fellow partners, the other Wild Bunch board of directors, again, aging out. They'd been doing this for over 30 years, wanted to retire. So we spent several years working on an exit plan for them. And in 2020, they retired, leaving me the sole director and owner of the Single Action Shooting Society. So
Mhm.
I'm beyond honored to have been trusted with this company by those who formed it and founded it. This marks my 17th year with the company,
Mm.
over a decade as the CEO. So, with that, we started in 1986 and it was literally run out of someone's garage. Everything was pen and paper. And um, our SAS number one, the judge, who was Harper Cray, this was all his dream. He started all of this. And he's since retired. Obviously they retired in 2020, but I get to talk to him fairly often. I had a good conversation with him earlier this year, signaling our 40 years of SaaS. And he's just like, who would have ever imagined? I don't think they realized the magic that they had created with
Mm-hmm.
this shooting sport and the organization and the people that it would attract to. So, um, I think they thought at one point if they got like 500 members, they'd consider it a success.
Right.
And in 2026, we're issuing over 115,000 memberships. So
That's crazy.
being able to manage that much data over 40 years is kind of what led me to eventually, thankfully, finding Pilot West
Yeah.
and
Well,
the
before we
services
get
we were
there,
able to
I do want to
provide.
add
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
not your only business. So, did the gun range and gun shop come first?
No, afterwards. So
Okay.
uh, my husband, we are second marriages. So my husband had built this gun range and a gun club. Of course, it was a SASS, it was a cowboy club. So I met him through, obviously, our association within my company.
Well, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, so it started in 2020 when the Wild Bunch Board of Directors retired. I formed an advisory board of SASS members from different locations around the country because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't a one woman show, that the SASS members were represented in different regions and that I could get different opinions and feedback and be able to see what was going on regionally from
Mm-hmm.
well-respected, established SASS members who some are in leadership roles and that sort of thing. And I was able to sort of handpick my advisory board, not just based on their experience with SaaS, but also their real life business experience. What sort of, chops did they bring to the table to really help us ensure SaaS has a future, for another 40 years. So
Mm-hmm.
I asked him to join my advisory board. I was still living in New Mexico and he here in Indiana. And
Oh, okay.
yes, so I knew I
Got
had
it.
been to this range when it was a state match. I had met him before, but I mean, we plan and God laughs, right?
Yes, you're
Um,
right.
after the COVID closures in 2020 and then again in 2021, the restrictions in New Mexico were still pretty significant.
Mm.
So we needed to find an alternate location to host our World Championship event. It was the 40th anniversary. So we were looking for a different location. I called a meeting of my advisory board and not my husband, but another board member said, well, why not in Indiana? And so that's kind of how our story began, where our personal lives then kind of became woven into our professional lives. So we ended up
Wow.
hosting it here in Indiana in 2021, and we spent a lot of time together, obviously doing that. And fast forward, here I relocated SAS World headquarters to Indiana, and here we are.
Wow. And how long have you guys
Yeah.
been married? Side note.
We just got married in September of 2023. So we're
Oh,
newlyweds. Yeah.
congrats. That's
Thank you.
such a great story. Yeah,
Yeah.
and for context, I mean, we've been working together, I mean, since 2024 at this point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of new information I'm learning about your
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
and SaaS and your second business. And me and my wife, I mean, I have this business and she's co-founded a magazine as well. So I know that stress, the pull between two different businesses, we can definitely relate
Yeah.
to that. But
We are
um,
very blessed, though, that both of our businesses are in the same industry. They complement each other really well. And so we both are kind of in that same sort of field. So they are able to work really well together. And it's been a really easy sort of combination or transition into individuals into this couplehood that we get to move forward through all these great adventures together now in business and in our personal lives. So
I love that. Well, there's so many rabbit trails I could go down, but
I know.
for the sake of what we're talking
For
about
our
here,
purpose here today, yes.
yes, exactly. I really want to talk about then, all right, you take over the business, and then what does the landscape look like from um, you taking over the business with the technology? And then at what point was like there a linchpin where it's like, all right, this is enough? Because this was a homegrown from the founder, right? He built it himself, the custom application you guys are running your memberships off of. Is that correct?
No, not the founder, but one of the key people early on, one of the
Got it.
early builders. So there was that small group core of people who, established SASS and cowboy shooting and all the rules. And it's a very multifaceted sort of situation that we have with organizing what we do and maintaining everything in the company. So there did come a point in the 90s where they realized we can't keep paper records of every member and maintain it and be able to manage it really well. So one of the original sort of core people uh, was a coder. He was legendary Southern California, Silicon Valley. He was the guy.
Hmm.
And so he worked with a group there in California, and they built our first membership management software. And that is what we just always refer to as the SASS database. So that's where all club profiles, member profiles were stored there. We managed membership renewals, all of our data. I mean, the every little A and I and cross T
Hmm.
and order history, everything was housed in this 1990s um, program.
Visual
So,
Basic application
yes.
specifically.
Yes, and that program was still in place when I came on board in 2009. Several portions of it didn't work anymore, but it's okay. We could do the meat and potatoes, but any gravy or if you want a side salad, it wasn't happening. But meat and potatoes, we could get the job done. And so we just kind of kept rolling with that. And as I moved more into leadership roles, because I did the day-to-day work too. I answered the phones, I processed renewals, I ran renewal notices, I took care of orders. I wanted to make sure that I was able to perform every single task within the company. And so I became really aware when you're using that day in and day out to accomplish, to meet an end goal or even just day to day processes, how cumbersome that system was. But it was what we had. The founders, had spent a lot of money and time putting together that
Right.
software. Um, Now, mind you, it was in the 90s, so this was 2009. So, and it wasn't until, 2010, 2015 that it really started to just kind of tremble in its boots a little bit. And, about 2015 is when we started to have some real conversations about replacing our membership management software.
Got it. So what you mentioned, it was really starting to fall apart around that time. How did you know? And I guess a big question when talking about helping people in a similar situation, when they're dealing with an older application in their business that, you're fully reliant on, how did you decipher that, like, this is not just a workflow problem, this is a technology problem? Because I will add, sometimes we talk to CEOs and, again, multiple, business sizes. So
Mhm.
not just one, but like all over the place. And people will come with features and feature this and feature that. You're pretty structured on what you knew needed to happen, unlike most. And I think you had a really good, well articulated idea of what the technology limitations were. So maybe help other CEOs imagine, like, how do you decipher between a workflow problem and the technology problem?
So the workflow problem was really self-evident in that the number of man hours that it took every single day just to get orders manually entered and processed so that we could fulfill them. That writing was on the wall. It really wasn't until as digital marketing started to evolve in, 2010 plus to 2020, and then it continues to evolve today.
Hmm.
That's when it really started to become evident, that there were so many things we knew we should be doing in this digital age, that we were unable to.
Can you give me some
Um,
examples?
yeah, so we couldn't direct contact with members through our database in any way. We were using to pull good data for membership metrics or anything like that. We were having to use an outside program and pull it into it and manipulate it. And we were way over our heads with that, but we found a way through it. Just being able to pull good data out of our database. One example was being able to customize. This sounds so silly, but it was so huge. For us, new member packages that had their letter and it was their welcome. That was their first impression of SaaS with what we
Hmm.
wrote on that. The same with renewals. Hey, how you doing? It's time to renew your membership. This is why we want you to. we had no way to edit or customize that text without having to go through the coder who originally built it, not the one of our founders, but the company, and
Hmm.
then wait for weeks. And so there was no way for us to in real time sort of update things, where we could promote certain events or, have special promotions that in real time. So we didn't have a way to really engage or pull good member data out of that system.
Got it. Yeah, because I remember what was the application you guys used? Crystal Reports. That was
Crystal
part of it, right?
Reports. Yes, Crystal
Yeah.
Reports was the only way we could get any real data out of our database. So,
And was
and
that
that
like
was
a Excel export essentially into the program, and then it would kind of sort it? Is that how it worked?
no, so Crystal Reports was linked to our database. So you could go in and build a report and you could put in different criteria once it was linked to the database, what you wanted it to pull, but you had to build the template for it to fall in correctly first. And you could pull in a lot of different data. And I mean, we got to where we were pretty good at it. We spent
Right.
a couple decades fighting our way through Crystal Reports to try
Yes.
and get what we needed out of the database. And but then once it was in Crystal Reports, then you would export it into Excel to be able to manipulate the data. So
That's right.
we were using several programs just to scave the data
So
from
what
the
it sounds
database.
like is you knew that it could be faster, and the workflow part was pretty straightforward. If this could just operate a little bit more as it should, as we know it has maybe even, then we could run much faster. Plus, then you're kind of being hamstrung because you have to export this thing into this thing. You have to pull this thing into that thing, which is very common with some of these applications, right? Or even what we're seeing today, Misty, is what I call SaaS spaghetti, where most businesses are running their business with 10 to 15 different tools. So like, how much are you actually spending taking this thing and putting in that tool, and exporting this thing, then put it in that thing, then sending this email out, and then like there's whether it's a custom application that's older or just way too many tools that are siloed, it creates the same problem.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So you realize that there needed to change. I really want to hear more about like what was your journey of 2015 hit and you really start exploring, we need to do something about
Yeah.
this. Where did you
So,
start? How long of a journey was that before you came across us?
well, it was on again, off again. Only because I'm being honest, because the system was so frustrating, and we were okay. We had the meat and potatoes. We were able to get stuff done, and we were still able to bring some of SAS's marketing into the 20th century via other applications and platforms. So we were okay. The database was what it was. And at least it got the job done. We were muddling through. We knew we just kept kicking the can down the road. So we kicked the can down the road. So in 2015, it might have been 2014, is when we first started kind of looking at some out of the box options. You know, can this be can our problems be solved by something, out of the box, like a membership software that's already readily available? They tout, customization, things like that. This wasn't a simple process. This was, months of meeting with the sales representative, obviously first, and then trying to get all the data to them, and then outlining what our non-negotiables were in terms of, now we assign a SASS number, it has to be sequential. We don't allow duplicate aliases. There's a lot of very niche criteria in my company that weren't negotiable in terms of what they could do. And is it okay to say names?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of them was Growth Zone, which I'm sure is a fantastic out of the box software for like a gym, a fitness
Typical,
club,
yeah,
or something like
membership.
that. But
Hmm.
even though it was pitched as fully customizable, it wasn't customizable to our standards. So just the process of getting from initial contact to it's just not going to work for us was like a 6-month process. And by then I'm just like, forget it. We have other more important things that we need to spend our time on. So
Yeah.
the can got kicked down the road again. And then it would, like, okay, there would be a month or two of sort of breathing room. And it's like, all right, let's jump back in and see what else we can find. Um, and so that process just sort of continued. And there was a point where I realized nothing out of the box was going to work for us. And that was probably 2018, 2019. That after spending 3 or 4 years looking for an out of the box option. And so I knew then, okay, my only option is a custom build, you know? And I think I did a few just sort of one-off sort of Google searches, and it just was so overwhelming. I didn't know the jargon. I don't know what I'm actually asking for. If you put in custom software and hit enter, I- where do you even begin? That's a full-time job to even just, research that and figure out where you went from there. So that happened several times. Obviously, 20 into 21, with COVID and the transitions within our company and the Wild Bunch board retiring and then the move to Indiana, there was a lot going on. But it wasn't really until 22, kind of late 22 into 23, that I started jumping back on this. All right, we're here, we're set up. This has to be a priority now. We can't keep piecemealing our daily processes together. There's got to be a way to streamline this. So, um, and that's what led me to you guys. And I have to say, Destiny had to have intervened at some point, because I thought, okay, here we go again, back to Google, and Lord help me. And I had, you go onto the websites and you think you know what you're looking at. And I'm an educated woman. I run a
Yes,
multi-million-dollar company.
I'd agree.
I'm very efficient. But that's just not my cup of tea. I don't understand the jargon. I don't understand the tech part of it. I know what I need to do, but I can't tell you what you need to do to get it to do that. So it's odd that I'm the business, but I'm also the consumer. So um, and I don't have a tech department. I run the company lean and mean. I have a great, fantastic crew. I don't have a tech I don't have a tech department. I don't have people who can write code or build for me what I need. So that's kind of where the gap sort of always was. And then I would get discouraged. I spent probably at least 6 months. I'd put in a request for a contact form or something. I stumbled across a few, probably less than a handful there in about 20 to 2020. And then the responses and the calls, the floods of calls and emails and texts that I would get, clearly foreign, couldn't understand them. And I'm not trying to be
No,
ugly. I'm just saying, like, where's a homegrown American tech company
well,
that will
most,
understand
yes,
the business environment, the work environment in the United States of America, that I can understand when they
yes.
speak, that will understand me and the culture of what my company is built on.
And it's not a 13-hour different time zone. And and that's
Yes.
totally
Yeah.
okay to say that
Yeah.
US business owners want to work
Yes.
with US based developers, and there's nothing wrong with
Right.
that.
Yeah. So, and it was conversation, contact after contact of, you know, uh, people I couldn't understand, and then I would started getting just like emails of like, here's a quote, we'll build your application for this. And I'm like, who are you? And how are you quoting? Like, no way. You don't even understand what I want or need. So I went through those waves, and it was just like, oh man, I couldn't do it. And then I don't remember, because it was a lot. You may remember. I think
Hmm.
there was a place I could post, like, I don't remember the name of the website where I posted.
Yes, it's a marketplace that we're now the number one developer on, which is
Nice.
Bark. And I think
Yes,
probably I imagine you probably search for software developers around me, and there's an ad at the top.
US or something.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah, because I had hit that point where I'm like, okay, there's got to be one in the US that I can understand and that will understand what my needs are. So
Yeah,
that might be how I ended up on there. So I did. So
it
I
is.
ended up on Bark, and I posted kind of a, Cliff Notes version, I think, of what our needs were. And I want to say within half an hour,
I think
you
I
called
called
me.
within minutes. I usually
Yeah, I
call
was going
under
to say
three
within half an hour.
minutes.
Yeah, I got on the phone with you, and I immediately was like, did destiny just intervene? It took 15 years, and I have a young man who sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He's in Tennessee. I can understand every word he's saying. He's well spoken. You took and so then I was able to go to your website. I'll say it before and I'll say it again. Software development that doesn't suck was the first thing that I saw on your website. And I was like, where do I sign? This finally,
Well, I
finally.
want to. One thing I do want to reverse back really quickly, though. I
Yeah.
appreciate the kind words, and we can definitely get back to that. Is I think a big part of where most business owners, again, from super small to large companies,
Yeah.
which again, by the way, most companies don't have a tech team. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so even again, $100 million companies that we have clients of, or that are clients of ours, they don't have a tech team. Most businesses do not have a tech team. And so
Right.
when you don't have a tech team or even someone trusted in your organization, it's really difficult to know that exact question you mentioned. I have a problem. I don't know where to turn. And more importantly, I don't know if replacing this application is the best option. I don't know if rebuilding the application is the better option. Or I don't know if just getting something off the shelf is a better option. So I think that you actually struck gold a little bit on what we tell people, because for context, for those who are listening, and Misty, maybe you don't know this as well, but I mean, I have conversations again with CEOs and operators every week, and I would say about 80%, if not 90% of people that I speak to, I turn them away because I'm able to find something off the shelf that does what they need. They just didn't find it yet, because we really want to only bring in clients that have a real need,
Right.
that we know that we can solve. And so sometimes, in most situations, they just haven't found the right tool yet. And my background before starting this business was like a decade in SaaS, which is software as a service, not single action
Yeah.
shooter society. Uh, and so let's go back to what you mentioned there of why you tried the off the shelf. At what point did you realize it wasn't good enough? And how would you help other people best define that as well for their organization?
It went back to the non-negotiables for us. Again, we're a very niche company. So I would say by all means explore the out of the box options, but make sure you understand the criteria of what is actually customizable and what isn't negotiable in your business structure and your workflow. So for us, we assign a unique membership number to every member, and they're assigned sequentially. Little side note about SaaS, they are sequential, and usually you can look at someone's badge with their SaaS number and tell about how long they've been in SaaS. The founder is SaaS number one. I started in 2009. I'm 83,232.
Whoa.
But now we're issuing 100 and, 15, nearly 116,000. So those numbers become an identifier. And so we don't recycle SaaS numbers. So once that number is issued to you, it's always yours. And it's a very just sort of unique way for SaaS members to show their pride of how long they've been in the organization. So those are assigned sequentially, automatically. The other thing is the alias. So when you join SaaS, you choose an alias, but we maintain an alias registry and each alias is unique to each member. So we don't allow any duplications. If it sounds the same, it is the same. There's certain criteria for that. And the out of box options we explored just weren't able to customize those non negotiables for us in terms of managing the data. And before we realized that, even there were parts of the out of the box software that we could have made work. Like it's tough because when you've used internal jargon and called something you know, a cat for 40 years, and then you go into a new software and it's now called a dog,
Yeah.
but we can't change what it's called to cat because cat's what we've called it for 30 years. That I'm like, okay, all right. Even that was negotiable for
Right.
us, as a team. It was like, we can learn to call cat a dog. It'll be
Yeah.
fine. We can negotiate. So
Right.
figure out what you can live with or become accustomed to and what isn't negotiable for you in terms of your customer's experience. For me, it's my members' experience. And for what's going to help you achieve your goal or your mission in terms of what your company is there for, you know?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. That's exactly what we talk about and what we preach specifically is figuring out there's usually three layers to software development on kind of the justification level. If you're like a new business, get off the shelf as much as you can. It's going to be
Right.
usually more cost effective and do most of what you need it to. And then once you start like outgrowing that or you have some unique workflows, usually you can do like find an off the shelf solution with an API, which just allows data to flow from one thing to the other so that you can pass data back and forth between applications where, like I talked about, you don't get the SaaS spaghetti where there's siloed applications and windows that you're copying pasting stuff everywhere. And
Mhm.
then the final bit is a custom application, truly custom to your business. And you mentioned what we say often, which is it depends on if you run standard of the mill, you can probably find something off the shelf, standard of the mill, run of the mill.
Right.
But
Right.
the fact that you guys had these non-negotiables, that you had well articulated that if it can't meet this criteria, it's going to be a no. I think that's exactly what other founders will have to think through as well as what are the non-negotiables and what is actually unique about my business that could make an off-the-shelf solution a non-tenable. Now, I want to get into then. Um, so you're going through the process. Um, we met through a marketplace, and then what was the difference maker for you on when you found us and you met Adam and I,
Hmm.
fresh off the street, brand new company. What made you trust us? I guess like what was the difference between all the other people you talked to prior to go? Okay, they do things differently, and what would you suggest other business owners to look for when they found the right person?
Yeah. Um, Well, again, it just right out of the gate, I loved that you were, I think I referred to you at one point, not to you, but just a couple of good old American boys, the good old Tennessee boys. And I'm pretty sure they're just starting out. I'm not sure, just based on age. I may have decided that you were maybe new to the business, but I think just immediately. When we first sort of met, and I met you and Adam, and I was talking you through all the things that my current system does and what I need it to do. And, you had questions that I couldn't answer because I don't understand it. And I think one of the biggest selling points for me was that you and Adam both always treated me with respect and understanding, and you never once made me feel stupid because I didn't get the jargon. I don't know the tech terms or the software building code words that y'all use, and so I felt heard. I felt validated, and you never made me feel like I needed to learn a whole nother side career just to be able to accomplish this goal. You and Adam both just sort of gave me we got it. We understand what you need. Here, we're going to be able to give you some options. And then just right out of the get-go, you prioritize the stability of my company's information over selling me the new software build. I don't know if you recall, you probably do. When we tried to get you access to the database, we found it was where it was housed and that it hadn't been backed up, and we don't know in how long. And you guys just hit the brakes, and Adam said, let's get this secure before we do anything else. And so you spent weeks really just securing my data, the livelihood of my company. You did a diagnostic. We got it moved to an AWS. Look, I can say the words.
There you go.
Um, yeah, look at me. I'm like all techy now. We got it moved to an AWS that we controlled, and that's when we started. You guys even chased down rabbit holes with all these different companies. Um, Again, because we didn't understand that we were paying for services that we didn't even need or that weren't being done. Um, so right out of the gate, you guys proved through your actions that you weren't just there to sell me software and go away. You were there acting on behalf of my best interest, my company's best interest. So we just, man, did we get off on the right foot, at that point. So, because I'm pretty sure you guys worked several months before we even started really talking about what the new software build would look like. And that was just you supporting and protecting my company data because it was so
Yeah.
outdated.
Yeah, I remember it well. Yeah, the first 2 months were really going in, and for one, defining where is this server. I think we had to like chase it down, and we personally reached out to people to figure out like where does this thing live and how do we get access. Which again was most founders. It's like I don't know unless you have a server on site. Like it can be hard to know what this thing is.
Well, and it was tough because in 2009, our server was in site. When I started, our
Mm,
server was on site. Some things were hosted by a company in California. So SaaS started in Southern California. It didn't move to New Mexico until 2009.
got it.
So we still had some California vendors. There was one point where we decided to let them host our server. I'm the one that unplugged it on a Friday and drove it to Southern California from New Mexico and handed it to them.
That's amazing.
Then it became, they were taking care of it for us. So we had some vendors for our tech needs. I don't know what else to say in California. And then of course we evolved to some in New Mexico. And it had gotten to the point where with handoffs, things just got overlooked, I guess. I'm not sure. And so not my
Yeah.
finest moment when you said, where's the server housed? And I'm like, I um not sure.
Here's
Yeah.
some emails and we chased it
Yeah.
down and that's
Yes,
okay
you
again.
did. You
That
did.
is
Yeah.
okay because yeah, what we found was what was more shocking that it was being hosted by a company, but that there was two things that we were like, all right, we have to pull the brakes and evaluate before we do anything else, because we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we replicate this old database
Right.
into a new, like AWS instance, and to where this thing can live and scale, remotely wherever. And when we got into it, we began to realize that there was a button that was turned on essentially that said, hey, if because the settings switched on, if this physical machine, the server ever gets turned off, delete the entire application or delete the database. And then when we looked at the last backup, it was like 3 or 4 years, which meant that SASS would have had to gone back because you guys still keep paper records, redundant paper records, right?
Not since we launched Iron
Not
Horse. No.
exactly. Well, we'll get there.
But
But
at
you
that time,
used
yes.
to, yes,
Yes.
you used to keep paper, which meant that you
Yeah.
all would have had to go back 3 or 4 years and re-input all the lost data into the system. And so thankfully we got that stabilized, we got that replicated,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
that was probably our biggest like, oh
Yeah.
no type moment. But and then we got into development, and then yeah, Iron Horse itself, the application that you guys use now has been working great. So one of the
That
things
you guys came up with the name for,
yes, I
which was
will.
another big win for
That's
me.
probably our the most fun part of our job is coming up with cool application names for businesses, and sometimes it sticks. Now, when we're talking about when we got into the project of building Iron Horse, what I think that you did exceptionally well, as you call yourself a type A person, and I'm a
Yeah.
type A person as well. No wonder we're running our own companies because we're control
Yeah.
freaks, I guess.
Yeah.
But once you got underway, I think what you did really well, if you weren't traveling, which you were traveling a lot when we were building this, but when you weren't traveling, I feel like you did a really good job of keeping things on the rails. Where most owners or operators that we work with, they either do one or two things. They either like see the potential of things and their eyes get huge, and then like it's shiny penny syndrome, which has made us move to the North Star development. Hey, let's all gain alignment about what direction the business needs to be at the end of this development cycle, so we're all fully aligned, as a business and as a vendor. And then the second thing is they'll do instead will be, all right, I'm doing this now, let me pass this off to the team because they're the users. And while that's true, then they can start requesting, well, because of my job, I want this. Well, because of my job, I want this. I think you've done a really good job of being able to keep everyone informed, but make sure that things stay tight and that the scope does not go beyond what it needs to. And so, how do you think through kind of that project management? Because I think you're probably the best one that we've seen so far of keeping things on the rails. Like we don't have to manage you to keep the project on the rails.
Right.
You just, I feel like we're fully aligned as a company in what you want as well.
Yeah, so we just had this discussion last week as we're moving into phase two of Iron Horse, and I think we did have some of that, squirrel a little bit because the term I used in our meeting was through the initial construction of it, we did have a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And that's because we had specialized departments that my team are in charge of. And while, yes, I can give you the bird's eye view, we kind of needed the squirrel on the ground. Like, what is actually working? What do you need? What could streamline your job and your processes? Um, and so there were a few times, probably when I was traveling, that a few of them was like, oh, I want this and this and this and this and this. And you guys did it. And it was like, oh, you didn't need to do that. Could have waited, you know? So we had a
Right.
little bit of that when I was traveling. But I think for the most part, we stayed the course. And I think part of that is because I was able to, I'm not a micromanager just by trade. You know,
Hmm.
I let those who do do. And
Yeah.
I've always
That's what you
said
hired
that
them for.
whether yeah, whether that is how I manage folks who, you know, if we're hosting events or anything like that, I got bring match directors in. I'm not going to micromanage the match directors. Let them do. They're the ones who do, let them do. Um, so I kind of take more of a bird in the sky approach to projects like that. Have people in roles that I trust, so to be able to do it. And there were a few times, and we all did it. Even you and Adam did it. We'd get super stoked about what we could do down the road, and we'd all kind of squirrel off for a little bit. But I would just kind of have to kind of bring them back in. Look, this is phase one. This is our goal, and I just kind of knew going in I wasn't. And I told you guys, I don't care if it takes a year. I just want it done right. Like, let's take our time. I've been dealing with this program for 15 years. I don't care how long it takes, but we've got to make sure we hit all the marks. And
Then I
so,
guess that maybe that's a better way of asking the question then is how
yeah,
did you define what right was? Because it's so easy to keep going out in all these little
yeah,
rabbit trails and ooh, there's so many things we could do. But I feel like whenever we needed to keep like gain realignment as a business of your team, our team, us all together, you were like laser focused. So what was your methodology behind like, okay, phase one, it has to be this and this is good enough. How did you define good enough, I guess?
so for me, I'm going to go back to the meat and potatoes. I feel like I'm throwing so many cliches out in this interview, but you know, the
Only if they're
foundation of,
cowboy related.
I know, right? Well, meat and potatoes isn't. Well, I guess kind of. But
Yeah, meat and potato works.
yeah, yeah. But you know, the core structure of our processes, those day-to-day operations is what we really needed to focus on in the initial build. But where we kind of went off a little bit because it's like you know, I would say, well, eventually I you know, I would like to be able to have the ability to do this and this and this and this. And we did that a lot only to make sure that the foundation you were building was going to support those next phases of development. But I was able to, I guess, just sort of hone in on what those basic functions and how we were able to improve and streamline our day-to-day operations and processes,
Yeah.
while keeping in mind that the foundation needs to be able to support the next phase down the road. So I just, you know, there were several times we came back to it and I would just rein everybody back in and I'm like, okay, here's the deal. Because the other thing that you and Adam did was provide us with a real time sort of test version where we could go in and play around with it and see what you had done and see what was working and try things out and that sort of thing before we ever went live. And you know, did you go in and do it? I would ask the team, and what have you found? And they'd all just kind of, "Meh." I'm like, okay, we're launching Iron Horse on Monday. What is missing? For you to be able to do your job from beginning to end and what your daily tasks, what daily operations are on the daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, what needs to be in Iron Horse. Forget all the fun, frilly, you know, improvements we can do down the road, just basic day-to-day operation, what is missing. And so that's, I would just kind of steer them back towards that.
Hmm.
I guess full well I had the confidence in you guys that we needed to build a really great foundation, um, and in phase one and get us just rocking and rolling in Iron Horse. And then now let's talk about how we can improve and what we can add to it to make it an even more dynamic um, software for our company.
Yeah. And we're over a little bit on time here. Is it if okay if we run over a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, you're
Okay,
okay.
perfect.
Yeah.
I think You described it perfectly, and I think that was it. Because for context, again, you even came to the conversation saying like, "There's things we want to do. We have all these different parts of technology we want to incorporate. We want to bring things into one spot." But you stayed really focused with phase one, and you kept everyone moving in the same direction. And I think you nailed it. You nailed the nail on the head, specifically around you're focusing on replacing a legacy application, so you're focusing on replication. And I feel like we all had alignment around, all right, we are replacing the application. That was our North Star, whether or not we called it back then. We were
Right,
replacing the
right,
application. So we need to be able to move off this application and
right,
replicate it. And then essentially at that point, we knew, okay, well, if we're replicating, what can we improve? And then
right.
I feel like that gave us some enhancements where it kept it lean, but we're able to add some things like the username profanity filter and things like
Right.
that,
Yeah.
where that wasn't a part of the original scope or application, but it just made sense because it wouldn't take a lot of development and it actually cut down on a lot of time. And so, what is the time difference? Shameless plug. What is the time difference in what it takes to manage a member between the old application and new application from what you're seeing now?
Um, it's a 50% decrease in time spent just on manual entry, data entry and processing. Even phone calls, phone sales, in person, at events because we do set up at events and handle membership services and sales in person as well. Just the flow of it is so much better. A lot of streamlined purposes. We still do have some manual entry, which is what we're moving into phase two, but that's kind of the nature of our business. We weren't ready to tackle that yet with phase one because there will always need to be a human hand in establishing a new membership, approving that alias, that personal welcome. That is kind of what sets our company apart. And so uh, we're not looking to replace our team, but the full on entry, I think, and a lot of the membership management can be self-managed by our members. I had said to you guys, we manage everything online from our healthcare to our grocery shopping to banking. SaaS needs to be able to provide that as an option to our membership as well. And that's why we're moving
Mhm.
into phase two. So the web integration in the next phase, working with you guys, we're really excited about. That will free up hours a day that we still have, from even moving into Iron Horse now. But
Amazing.
so
So then I guess my final question here
yeah.
is like for a non-technical or again a CEO without a coding background who owns a business and they're sitting on old software right now, what do you wish someone had told you before you started, or what do you wish you knew before you started this, back in 2015?
Oh, um, it's tough because I think unless someone finds Pilot West, and I'm genuinely not just trying to like stroke you guys' ego. I'm just saying from someone who spent a decade in that space trying to find the services that I ended up getting from you guys. Um, I don't know that anyone could have told me anything differently 10 years ago other than you need, because Pilot West didn't exist then. And that's where I think you guys, you and Adam and your crew at Pilot West, you need to not undersell that about yourselves. I don't know that there's any other software development company in the United States that will provide the service that you provide. And maybe it's just because I don't know it and I got lucky with you guys first. But having spent 10 years looking for software development, I don't know that there's anything anyone could have told me other than, like hold out or look or maybe do that Google search and I could have posted on Bark a little sooner looking for United States based. I mean, it's tough. I don't know that there's really any advice someone could have given me other than in terms of finding, support and a developer that worked for us. Aside from, I guess, I think when you don't understand a space, regardless of how successful you are in business, it can lead to some intimidation, maybe a little bit of anxiety, regardless of your level in business. But if you're not part of a space and you don't understand it and you don't speak the lingo or the jargon associated with it, communicators particularly have a really hard time going into that room because we don't know how to communicate, you know, what our needs are. And so I think that's another check for you guys, just, that you never made me feel, stupid because I didn't understand the jargon or the terms. You took my layman's descriptions of what we had and what our needs were, and you were able to interpret them. So that I think look for someone who's going to provide you that.
Yes.
And the other thing was, I guess, cost. It's always pretty scary. And when you're looking around, you're just like, man, I don't even know. And, maybe you're prioritizing a marketing initiative or this or that. And you think, well, I gotta, it's kind of like, there are two types of people who clean their houses, right? Those who just will quickly just shove everything into a drawer and close it so it looks clean on the outside. And then there's the people who, if you open their drawers, everything has a home and it's
Right.
neat and organized and where it should be. And that was the equivalent of our internal software, and I think a lot of businesses struggle with that. You don't want to, you don't let them see you sweat. You don't let them see you sweat, and you want to put your best foot forward. And so you're just shoving everything in that drawer and closing it, when company comes in. But you got to clean out the drawer, and it's going to be painful. Not really painful, but scary. And I think the expense is significant. We're not going to undermine that at all. But I think, Jake, the other service that you provided really well from the get-go was offering an analysis on not just, well, here's your software and we'll build it, but what can we do to improve your business stats, how your productivity, your
Yeah.
output. And so you were able to really kind of help me identify in the thought process of, if, yes, this is an expense, but look at what I will gain by doing it, rather than it just being, more streamlined. You steered me toward keeping me on task for that. And again, while expensive, we have another saying in cowboy action shooting. People are always asking about guns or which gun should I buy, but God, it's so expensive. And because you're buying four guns if you want to come play the game. And the thing we always say is, um, buy once and cry once.
Once cry, once I do. You're gonna say it.
Buy the guns now. Buy the expensive ones. You know, I think that that's relevant in this situation as well. It's going to sting a little bit, but you can prepare for it. We had years to prepare for it, while you're looking, and I'll bet um, businesses that are functioning on a legacy software probably have a little tucked away in the coffers, and
Yeah.
it'll be money well spent for sure. So.
Yeah, I think 2 points you mentioned there that we've seen in practicality is that's right. Like you shouldn't have to feel like you have to speak the language of a developer to have a developer work in your business. I've seen this with marketing agencies and other people that I've hired in my businesses. And a true expert, you know it when you see it because they can explain it in layman's terms, and they're not having to set up like this mysterious veil of meta ads or whatever it might seem.
Right.
They make it approachable. That's a true expert, can explain something that's super complicated in really simple language. And so I'd say for most business owners, if you find someone who's like speaking to lingo, that's probably a red flag. And more importantly, like what you mentioned, in speaking of communication, you don't feel like as a business owner you have to know the lingo or you have to know, speak their language, because that can actually put you more in a spot to look more like a victim or become a victim because of it.
Yeah.
But I would say know your business and know your numbers better, because if you can come to the conversation and go, because a lot of them say like, I don't know what's expensive or what I can afford. Well, everything
Right.
seems
Yeah.
expensive if you don't know what the cost is. And so that's even why I built a calculator where people can go in and input their business figures, and it spits out based off their problems what that ROI is, because that's the first place a business owner should start, is looking at software as if it's any other 10 to 20 year asset. Like a skid steer, you buy as a landscaper. You're not just doing it willy nilly. You're looking at the depreciation of it, tax purposes, and you're looking at what it can do in your business. And I think with software, you just have to think of that same methodology of what is this going to return to me over this next decade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. This has been fantastic. Any shameless plugs or anything else that you want to add here, Misty?
No, I don't think so. Other than if you haven't heard of Cowboy Action Shooting or the Single Action Shooting Society, you should check us out. You can go to sassnet.com. We have over 500 affiliated clubs all over the world. Everybody's dressing up. We're playing cowboy. We're having a great time. There's probably a club near you.
Yes, you should definitely check out
Yeah.
sassnet.com, right?
Yeah.
And check out their merch. I'm actually wearing their SASS
You
hat,
are.
and
Yeah.
they got a lot of cool retro Western posters. So even if you're not going to join SASS, but you just want some cool cowboy merch, you should definitely check out the Mercantile store.
Yeah. Thanks, Jake.
Misty,
Appreciate it.
thank you so much for joining. This has been great.
Of course. Thanks.